Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Hanan. I'm the program specialist here at SheetGeek. Thank you for everyone for joining us. Today, we're super excited to host this career pathing event called Under the Covers. But of course, before we begin, I'd like to go ahead and acknowledge the traditional lands of Treaty 7 and Treaty 8. Okay, so SheetGeek, we stand for diversity, inclusion, equity, and of course, belonging. We support reconciliation and believe we all have a role to play in building harmonious relationships between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. A land acknowledgement is a traditional custom of Indigenous people when welcoming outsiders onto their land and into their homes. To build respectful relationships, acknowledging the land is an important part of reconciliation. It honors the authentic history of North America, its original people, and tells the creation story of our country that has historically been missing. In gratitude, I acknowledge that we're gathering today on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation, Region 3, as well as the traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, traveling route to the Cree, Dene, Denza, Beaver, and the Métis. Thank you for your enthusiasm and commitment to joining us for this digital event hosted on the beautiful lands of Treaty 7 and Treaty 8. So for those of you who have joined us and don't know so much about SheetGeek, maybe this is your first introduction to us, I wanted to share that the reason why we exist is because there's not enough women in technology, and the women we do have are leaving. We're here to change that. We believe through mentorship, peer elevation, and community support, we can shift that narrative. We're determined to help women find their future and forge new paths in technology, because this will have a bold and beneficial impact on the future and the tech that defines it. So how do we accomplish that? So we believe that accomplishing that through one of our programs called Career Pathing, which you're going to learn a little bit more about today. So by helping women, we see more career visibility. We can better retain them in technology careers and in companies. So career pathing for us is curated introductions. There's people behind the scenes like myself that will actually introduce you to an individual for a 30-minute conversation, another woman in technology, and that person will help you strategically build your network and achieve greater career visibility. So career pathing for us is an initiative that will solve this leaky funnel that we know that occurs for intermediate women in tech. And this has been supported by the great folks at the Province of Alberta, working in partnership with the Government of Canada to provide more employment support programs and services. So thank you to them. All right, so career pathing, it helps women in technology. We kind of talked about that already. We want to make sure that you're building out your strategic networks and you're achieving those sort of greater career visibility. So what do we want to achieve in this event today with you? In this session, you'll actually get a chance to see a live career pathing conversation actually unfolding between a real career guide who's our mentor and a real pathfinder who's a mentee. So not unlike what you would see in your own experience if you're a part of the career pathing program, this is kind of what a session would look like. So you have a front row seat to this live career pathing session between Nikki Robinson, our career guide, and Julia Huko, our pathfinder. So in this candid discussion, you're going to learn a few things that we hope, of course, that has brought you here. So what is actually career pathing, the value of career pathing that can add to the career development that you have set for yourself, as well as how to ask great career questions. And for those who are looking to support women in this industry, how can you accomplish that through this program? I'd love to introduce you to our panelists. And from there, we're going to go ahead and move right into the live session. So just so you guys know, we're going to save a bit of time at the end for audience questions about the program. You can ask those questions to Nikki, to Julia, or to myself, and feel free to put them in the chat throughout the entire discussion so that we can keep track of them. I also ask, because you're our audience members, to be very present and to participate. It's really easy during these sort of digital events to answer a few emails. But when you're a part of the SheetGeek community, you kind of own a piece of it. And we ask you that you sort of show up today in your whole self. Okay, let's get on to the introductions. But I want to make a note here that you'll find that our panelists will be talking about UX design. And we recognize that our audience comes from all types of roles in this industry. So I want you sort of to think about this session more so as a way to imagine how it would look or work for you. So not so much about the specifics of UX design in general. So let me introduce you to our Career Pathing Live session panelists. We've got Julia Huko. She's our Pathfinder in our program. She's a UX designer with about 4+ years of project management experience in the not-for-profit spaces. She loves to leverage digital tools like apps and websites to amplify the reach and the capacity of businesses in the non-digital sector. So Julia, she uses career pathing as a way to connect with amazing women in the field to learn about their unconventional journeys into UX design. And I should note that Julia's been a Pathfinder in our program for quite a few months now. So Nikki Robinson is our career guide. Nikki is a UX designer for an award-winning company headquartered here in Calgary, Alberta. You can see that's Absorb Software. As a career transitioner herself, Nikki is passionate about encouraging and supporting new and aspiring UX designers as they work to move into the industry. Outside of work, Nikki can be found, I love this, when permitting, of course, traveling, twisting away in a yoga class or hanging out with her partner and her cat, Shay. I know that she's working from the office, so we probably won't get a chance to meet Shay, but that's too bad, maybe for another day. And on that note, I'd like to bring Julia and Nikki into our chat, and I am going to let you two take it away and have your discussion as you normally would once we've sort of connected you two through career pathing. So off to you two.
Awesome. Thanks, Hanan. I think you may be muted.
I was muted.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, it's not going to be a Zoom meeting if that doesn't happen once or twice. So got it out of the way. So hi, Nikki. Usually when I join anyone for a networking chat, I really like asking them, so what brought you into UX?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right out of university, I started working at a stock videography company as a content lead. But I wasn't feeling like my skills were being utilized to the fullest from my communications degree and my visual design minor. So I was kind of looking for what my next steps would be. And very fortuitously, we just hired a UX designer at that company. And I was kind of like, oh, what is a UX designer? I've never heard of this kind of designer before. And from there, I went home and started researching it and saw that this is exactly what I was looking for and it might be a good fit for me. And then right as I started looking into this role, my position as a content lead at that company was cut as a result of the pandemic. And from there, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, but I was put in touch with the founder of a software consultancy. And she brought me on as a content writer. And that was a great job, but I was still really fixated on UX design. So I enrolled in the professional diploma for UX design with the UX Design Institute. And I worked as a content writer while completing my diploma, working at the software consultancy. And then again, very fortuitously, I've had a lot of luck with timing in my career thus far. My boss at the time was looking to outsource some user experience design for a few projects she had coming up. And rather than outsourcing it, she gave me a shot at those projects as I was about to finish my diploma. So that was kind of my first entry into a professional UX design. And then from there, I did that for about a year, but I started wanting something that was a little more consistent, a little more stable, with a bit of a higher UX maturity. So I signed up for a tech fair, and I had two companies that wanted to speak with me, and one of them was Absorb. And here we are today. 4 months later, I've been working as an intermediate UX designer for Absorb software.
And I love hearing your story, because I feel like every single person I've spoken to who have transitioned into UX, they have this winding road. And then when they find out about UX, it's like, oh, it's a holy grail.
Yeah.
And it's the moment that you're thinking, oh, I didn't know a field like this existed. And so one thing, as a junior designer, one thing that I kind of have always heard among my peers is that when you're a junior designer, your main struggle is finding a job to be a junior designer. When did you feel like, you know what, I can be an intermediate designer, I can be more senior? When did that happen for you?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate early on in my career to have a wide variety of different UX projects that I got to work on, working for the software consultancy. So I had probably 7 or 8 significant UX projects under my belt with that company, where I felt like I was ready for the next step. Additionally, I was working as a solo UX designer for the company. So at the time, I had to do everything related to UX design. So UX research, competitive analysis, UI, I had to do it all. So it was really formative for me in the early stages of my career, being able to work on such a variety of projects, that I think that is what made me feel confident enough to look for that next step.
And so what's the difference between the day-to-day of a junior designer and an intermediate one?
So from working as a junior designer, I think the level of granularity that you go into as an intermediate designer is a lot more pronounced. So the other thing to keep in mind is I worked as a solo designer, where I was working on very high level, giant products that I would have to build out in maybe a week. But as a UX designer on a team, you get a lot more granular in the features that you're working on, which has made me a far better designer for it. I think not a lot has changed, maybe save for the quality of my designs. The more you do something, the better you get at it, right? So being able to continuously have stories come in as an intermediate UX designer and take authority over them, and provide my designs to other fellow team members and have them critique it and analyze it, has been the biggest differentiator, I think, moving from junior to intermediate for me.
Okay. And then, so as an intermediate designer, are you client facing in the work that you do?
We are, yeah. So I work primarily with, I work with 2 other designers. So I work with a senior designer and then our UX lead. And we make a very big focus to interact with clients very frequently and regularly. So I've been here 4 months and I've been involved in a few user tests, but that is something that our team focuses on very significantly.
And so as an intermediate designer, like the reason I ask is I'm trying to understand, as an intermediate UX designer, do you get the chance to kind of play around with strategy or the features that you're kind of proposing to the client? I'm trying to understand how it works.
Totally. I would say so. To be fair, it might not look the same at every company or on every team, but I've been really fortunate in my team that they've brought me into the design ops process and are bringing me in to strategy for the product vision as a whole, which has been quite a transition, but has been really informative and helped me grow, kind of fill in those gaps that you have working as a junior designer into an intermediate.
Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that your transition from school to actual UX work wasn't like a clear cut, okay, this and then. It kind of happened concurrently. Can you tell me what is the main difference between the training that you've received and actually working in the field?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the main difference that I noticed from studying to working in the field, there's a few. So the first one is that perfection is a non-existent, non-existent ideal. I think in school we can, or when you're learning, I shouldn't say school. So when you're building your skills as a user experience designer, because there are many ways to do that, you can kind of iterate endlessly. But in the real world, as working as a professional, there are deadlines and there are other moving parts in the business that you have to accommodate for, and you have to make some compromises in terms of perfection, because the other, like, perfection isn't a real thing. Your design can always be a little bit more pixel perfect, but being able to produce something strong, on time, that serves a need is the biggest thing that I think I've noticed, is that you can't just iterate endlessly. Sometimes you have, good is good enough, and you have to provide that. Mm-hmm. The second thing would be, especially because I did my upskilling during the pandemic, is how much of your day is rooted in collaboration. So we have a very collaborative product philosophy here at Absorb, which has been really awesome, especially for an intermediate, learning from senior designers and people that have been at Absorb for way longer than I have. That collaboration has been really fundamental for helping me improve quickly. I think too, in these programs, you can work on projects together, but you don't get the collaboration to the extent that you will when you're in the field. Yeah.
So can you talk about what that looks like collaboration in the field? Especially right now, for example, I'm working through a certificate, and like you said, I hop on at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I'm done, but then I'm still working, except there's not a lot of that back and forth. What does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So for us, there is a lot of collaboration while also a lot of autonomy. So for example, our team, we start every Monday with an alignment meeting where we'll see what stories have come into our Kanban board. And from there, we'll kind of divvy up the new workloads based on everyone's pre-existing workload. So for example, we use a Brazilian barbecue method here on our design team, where green is I'm hungry, give me more. Yellow is I'm getting full, but I could be flexible. And red is please stop. I absolutely can't do anymore. And from there, we'll divvy up the projects, and then then we'll go off onto our own individual design corners and kind of work on our projects individually. And then we'll come back together at the end of the day and do a design review where we'll show each other what we've been working on, explain our rationale, and then from there, we can brainstorm how to make it better, what the pitfalls could be, how we can better serve user goals. And then we'll take it away again and try a new iteration.
Can you give an example? So it sounds like when you go to your boards, it's a bit linear in that, okay, we're trying to see who has capacity and who doesn't. Can you provide an example of a task that a junior designer would work on versus something an intermediate or a senior would work on?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think from my experience, some of the more junior style stories that a designer can work on would maybe be implementing a button onto a report page and finding a good information hierarchy for that. And then some of the projects that maybe myself and my more senior team members are working on are larger scale, looking at the product vision as a whole. So for example, my senior team member and my team lead have been working on the UX UI for our client-facing LMS currently, and giving it a whole new rebrand as well as an update in the user experience side of it. And they've just recently brought me into that project because it is a very big undertaking. So I think that would be a good way to describe it, is the more high level, larger projects kind of divvy out to senior, intermediate team members, where the smaller, granular features are kind of suitable for juniors.
Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And so as an intermediate designer, it's funny because I was chatting with a few folks from the design group that I'm in. And one of the things that we talk about was, juniors, we're so excited to be part of the industry, the sector. So we're joining all of these communities to learn. So I'm wondering, as an intermediate designer, we were talking about sometimes, that like go kind of fades away when you get more comfortable in a job. How do you continue improving as a designer?
Yeah, so I think, so personally, for me, a great way that I've been able to maintain that momentum, luckily I'm still pretty fresh at Absorb, and there's never a gap at things that we can do. But working or recognizing that your portfolio and your side projects are living documents. So you can constantly be improving those and showing your upskilling as you're working through your degree, or working working in your profession. So I think recognizing that your portfolio is a living document and constantly updating it with new personal projects that you want to take on. Maybe if you're looking to pivot into a different realm of product design, you could take on personal projects that would keep that momentum going. Additionally, volunteering as well to do design work for causes that you're passionate about is a really great motivator, because there's a significant driver behind it outside of improving as a designer.
And I love how you mentioned product design, there's this kind of terminology difference between UX design and product design in the sector. Can you talk a bit about your experience with that, actually working in the field?
Yeah, so I think there is still a bit of confusion amongst the masses between UX, UI, and product design, which makes total sense because they're all still developing into their own niches.
Mm-hmm.
But I think working as a product designer seems to encompass, well, I think they're very similar, but they're different in the sense that being a product designer seems to encompass everything. So additionally, if you can code as a product designer, that is a significant skill, whereas I find it's not as essential working as a UX or UI designer. Yeah.
And in your current team, are you all UX designers or product designers?
So we are UX focused. However, our senior design team member has a background in front-end web development. So that has aided him as a user experience designer for sure, but it's not absolutely essential.
Okay. So kind of now, as you're more intermediate in the role that you're in, what are skills that you would look at if you were to hire a teammate, like a UX designer teammate?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think one of them, so especially as a career transitioner myself, I would like to be cognizant of the pre-existing skill set that they have. So, for example, if I'm looking for someone with a background in writing, maybe they can transition that into microcopy, or maybe they have a strong background in communication. Even say if you've been a server for 4 years, and you can communicate quickly and easily with almost anybody, that's a really valuable skill to use for user experience research. So firstly, I don't know if there are exactly particular skills that I would look for outside of UX design inherently. I would just like to know what their unique skill set is that they could add on top of their UX design skills. Yeah.
And on that, just adding on to that, when you go through someone else's portfolio, what do you look for?
So I think that a lot of what I look for is their process, their critical thinking skills, their articulation skills, and how they can explain their process in writing or orally. UI samples is always a added benefit. So being able to see, so say for example, if you're very skilled in the realm of user experience, or that's what you've primarily done your training in, being able to show that you have a fundamental understanding of UI basics will aid you in interviews for sure. What else? Having those added skills as maybe additional pages on your portfolio, I would like to see, just because it helps me get a more holistic picture of who you are as a designer and what you can bring to the table.
And so what do you mean by added skills page?
So maybe not direct UX skills, but the more adjacent skills. Say if you have published writing, or if you do public speaking quite frequently, those could be valuable to show.
And I know it's funny to ask you this because you didn't really have like a traditional job hunt where to apply, how to apply. Would you have any recommendations for any junior designers that you've spoken to through SheetGeek's career pathing or otherwise to help with the job hunt?
Yes. So I have had a lot of luck in my career search, which I'm very grateful for and fortunate to have. But there are a few things that I think come to top of mind when asked this question. So the first one that I think is really important is approaching your networking strategy with a focus on relationship building as opposed to job acquisition. So what I mean by that is having conversations that do not start with the phrase "Are you hiring?" I think is really important because if you build a network rooted in strong, authentic, genuine connections with people in your industry, that's going to open up doors for you down the road in a very organic way. So for example, I had my colleague that had referred me to the founder of the startup I was hired at. He was simply just telling my story. He wasn't pitching me to the founder whatsoever, but she had heard my story and he knew I was a valuable employee with a strong skill set. And it just organically happened that she needed the skills that I had. And they were just having a conversation in passing. So that's what I mean by organic opportunities down the road. The second thing is sign up for everything. So attend as much as you can in terms of networking events, tech fairs. I didn't have high hopes when I signed up for the tech fair that I did, but without having interviewed, I had already had 2 companies wanting to speak to me based on my resume. So opportunities can appear in the most unexpected of places. I think those are 2 things that really stick out to me. The last would be to not get discouraged. It can feel discouraging to take this type of self-work on for a very long time, but that's just the nature of the process. And sometimes it takes a while to find the place where you're really going to thrive. I always tell my boss, I feel like I've hit the jackpot because it's such a good culture fit. And I think keeping that in mind when you're applying is really important.
And those are really amazing points. And I love hearing you say that because I'm recently coming to these realizations as I'm going through the job hunt or even just talking to people. Like personally, I've paused on job searching because it's too much. It can get too much, right? However, with things like career pathing or any of the networking, even just reaching out to folks on LinkedIn has been really eye-opening. Like, because then I get to hear about people's actual experiences or what did you think before coming to an industry? And then how is it actually like once you're in it? And
Totally.
so I really love that. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, you know, when you're new to a field, especially for career transitioners, you feel like you're always an imposter. Like you feel like, oh, you're always, there's someone else who has a traditional design background. Why would you choose me? So when did you feel like you were able to become a mentor or start, oh, I have knowledge to share? When did that happen for you?
It's still happening. No, imposter syndrome is it's a giant hurdle to get over that I think, I hate to say it, never fully goes away. It's something that you have to consistently work at silencing. But what's awesome is the more that we collectively speak to it and say that we're experiencing it, the less power we give to it. So I think that's really important, first of all. But in terms of being a mentor, so I think I've been fortunate in my career that I've had mentors for me every step of the way. So I had a mentor when I was working at the software consultancy in the form of the founder as a strong woman in business, navigating startups and startup culture. I had a mentor when I was working on the first iteration of my design portfolio from General Assembly. And I have two phenomenal, committed, brilliant mentors working with me at Absorb that help me navigate even my imposter syndrome every single day. So the motivation to give back in the way that they've given to me was a really big driver for me. But in terms of being ready, their authenticity and openness with me sharing where they are in their own journeys, because they're still learning, they're still people at the end of the day, really made me realize that even though I may not have the experience that someone who's been in this field for several years has, I have 1.5 years of insights that someone who's a year and a half behind me doesn't have. And that in itself is really valuable. And we're sharing. So.
And so if you were to do it all again, what would you say to any UX designer or people even interested in the field? How do they learn more about it? How do they do more to get into the field?
That's a great question. Because I don't think there's any clear-cut way to enter this field, which is both a blessing and very difficult thing to overcome. So I think a very useful outlet for me was contacting other user experience designers. So I reached out, as I mentioned, to the UX designer that worked at Dissolve, the stock videography company I worked at. And she was so great in giving me a full page of resources that I could utilize to start building my skills in this field. So reaching out to people that are already in the field is a great way to start learning about it. You can do that by email, or even in this post-pandemic era on LinkedIn. The only thing I would suggest with LinkedIn is give them a bit of a story, like tell us a bit about yourself. Don't just come in asking questions. Additionally, well, I think that's the biggest thing that helped me. Secondly, attending seminars like these are really useful. I think it helps give you, like you said, a more realistic view of what the day-to-day life of a user experience designer looks like. Yeah. And then I think just doing your own research as well. Research is a huge part of UX design. So it's a great way to kickstart that skill by finding the program that works for you and fits into your current lifestyle. Because I mean, it would be great if we could all just go back for a 2-year master's degree, but that is a huge financial and huge time commitment that isn't available for everybody. So finding the education that works for you will be really important for you thriving.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm just furiously taking notes here. Hi, Hanan.
Hi, Julia, Nikki. You guys are doing so good, and I hate to kind of put a cap on the conversation. I just want to note, Julia, you prepare for your sessions so well. Just so everyone in the audience knows, Julia did not come with us prepping her. This is how she is as a Pathfinder. She's remarkable at making sure that she has all of sort of the things sort of set up in advance of meeting her career guide. And I want to commend Nikki on her really candid and vulnerable insights and conversation. I loved that beautiful point that you were talking about being ready as a mentor and sort of understanding that you don't need to be a big senior leader to be a mentor, that you have value to share with others, and not hesitating to give that back to others as a result. So that's really wonderful. I really want to open this up to the audience to ask us some questions around this. I know I have a question for Julia. I know you've been part of this program for a time now, and what do you find to be the most valuable part of being in career pathing so far?
There's so many things, but I think the most valuable part for me is spaces where folks can be vulnerable. So out of all of the different designers that I've had the pleasure of meeting, they've all been really candid and really honest about what it's like to break into a field, because they were all career transitioners. And we would always talk about how it feels to feel like an imposter in any space that you're in because you're transitioning. And so just the honesty that I probably would not have gotten out of like a regular conference call with 12 other people has been really nice.
That's great. Thank you. And then Nikki, I mean, you've talked about sort of like the reasons why you've decided to mentor, because you've had really amazing women mentoring you through your process. There's lots of mentoring programs out there. Why did you choose SheetGeek in career pathing? What brought you to us?
Yeah, definitely. So I will mention too that the two mentors I currently have are men. They're great. They're great men.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So the SheetGeek community is, as Julia mentioned, really authentic, which I find really valuable for these kinds of conversations. And I was getting so many messages in my LinkedIn inbox from primarily women that were seeking this kind of guidance and weren't really sure where to go or who to ask. And I think that SheetGeek kind of carves out that space to let them ask those questions where they can be vulnerable and be authentic and genuine, which I think is really valuable. And honestly, even as a mentor, I think it's really valuable being able to have these kinds of candid discussions with people that are just starting out, because I wish I had a community like this when I was starting out. So
yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. I know that like when you mentioned networking, there is a question that I'd like to. It's brought up on the screen here. So let's go to that question first, and then I'll circle back to mine. So Maya's asking, is there a specific time in your career that is best to start career pathing? Ooh, I'm going to let you guys answer that question. I think I know the answer as well, but I'd love to hear from Julia and Nikki on this as well.
To me, the best start to start career pathing is when you know, or you have options of directions to go to. So the nice thing about career pathing in SheetGeek is that they ask you what your current skill sets are and what you're trying to be. And so for me, I thought, well, I want to be a UX designer, and that was great. But if I were to add something like I'm interested in product design or product management, I don't know yet. SheetGeek will help you match with folks that can maybe help you answer that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Nikki?
Yeah, I'm gonna play it on the reverse side of that and say that I think you can start career pathing very early in your career as well, even if you're just trying to get a better sense of what kinds or what the day-to-day looks like for different roles. So I think, Julia, you make a great point in having a direction, but if you're feeling a little unsure about what direction you want to go in, then I think you can start right away.
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of research, and you both know that when you sign up to be in career pathing, there's an intake form, and we do ask questions around like what kinds of goals you want to achieve. And this also fits in with sort of like the industry standard and other research outside of SheetGeek, is that most women really, what they're looking for is answers around career visibility.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes career visibility is like at the very beginning of your career, you're starting out and you just need some understanding of what to expect when you land in the workplace. But we're also finding that like women who have like 5 to 7 years worth of experience under their belt, and they want to see some kind of an advancement. They're like, well, what's next in my career sort of progression? And sometimes they don't have other women in their company that kind of can show them, what roles are available or how they got to those particular roles, or it's not just clearly defined for them. And so we find that anyone, even if they have like 15 years of experience under their belt, if they're finding that they can't move upwards and they're trying to understand where else they can go, this program is a really great way of finding that out, because what we do is we introduce you to women maybe outside of your own company who already have done so or achieved that. Because what we really want to do is keep women here. We want to keep women in technology. We don't want them to exit out and go elsewhere, because we think it's really valuable to be here. So great question, Maya. Thank you for bringing that up. That's really wonderful. I am going to go ahead and ask the question that I wanted to ask. We set up these sessions for you guys. Part of the expectation in most mentoring programs is that you would continue this relationship forever and ever until the end of time. And both Julia and Nikki, maybe this isn't a question, this is more of a statement, but Nikki and Julia know this, that like their 30 minutes are up with each other. And if Nikki chooses to do so, she can open it up to Julia to meet for another session down the road. But really what we try to achieve here at SheetGeek is you get a 30-minute session. You could see how much you can accomplish in 30 minutes time, but you meet someone brand new your next connection and your next session. And I know that Julia's done this quite a bit now. And like, what are you finding is like the benefit of actually doing it that way, instead of having the same mentor sort of go through the process with you for like an entire year or entire 2 years?
So it's really funny that you mentioned that, because before the session, I was thinking about, okay, like how many mentors have I met and how have I kept it going? And so the nice thing about living in this day and age, you have LinkedIn. And so all of my mentors, I ask like, hey, is it okay if we connect on LinkedIn? And they're like, absolutely. And some of the mentors that I've spoken to like months ago would message me, I saw this job posting, reminded me of you, you should apply. It's really hard to get like a junior designer position, so I thought of you. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Or another one was, oh, I saw you posted your portfolio, here are my comments. And I didn't even need to ask. And so it's just so wonderful that instead of just having one mentor, that relationship continues with 4, 5, 6 different people who are looking out for you, even if it's like in their own way. Like they're not actively chatting with you, but you're still on their mind, right? So that's really nice.
And I think it speaks to Nikki's like expression around building out your network, so that you have like all these people sort of sponsoring your world for you without it being like a direct, hey, I need a job, find me a job kind of relationship. We've got a question here from Ms. JDP. Welcome. Okay, so how do you start in career pathing is your question. So we will actually be sending everyone, and it might be already in your inbox, but an actual like email where it sort of ties things up from our discussion today, and as well as how to sign up as a Pathfinder or as a career guide. If you don't receive something in your inbox, you can also go to our website under Career Pathing tab and be able to sign up that way as well. I think we're going to sort of head into the closing remarks. Anything that you guys would like to share with our audience before we sort of say goodbye to everyone? No, it sounds like you guys have you've spoken quite a bit.
I feel like I was just asking 2-3 word questions and Nikki did all the talking. But for me, for anyone considering Pathfinder or SheetGeek's program, I 100% say do it. If you're new to the city or you want to expand your connections in the city, do it. Or even if you don't really know how to network, because when I first started SheetGeek, oh gosh, I was a nervous wreck because I thought, oh my gosh, how do I fill 30 minutes? But it's honestly a safe space for folks just trying to explore and even improving your networking skills. 100% win-win.
Yeah, and I should note that you do not have to be in any particular city to be a part of this program. The beauty of online world right now is you can be from anywhere, and we can make sure that we connect you with people that fit your goals and attitudes. So yeah. Nikki, anything last to say?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would just like to say for anyone that is considering being a career guide and feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome around it, the beautiful matching system that SheetGeek has created makes it really beneficial for both parties. So I think if you are thinking about doing it, you should do it. You do have valuable insights, and yeah, go forth, be a mentor.
And on that note, I really want to extend a huge thank you to our speakers, our partners, and our funders for today's event. And as we noted before, if you've enjoyed this event, consider signing up for the program. Instructions on how should be in your inbox. And if you're looking for more information on career pathing, you can visit our website to learn more. It's also a great way to connect with me. You can find my contact there. And again, thank you to everyone who joined us here today. Happy Friday, and have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.